with a lot of cross currents this morning, to say the least.
A lot of cross currents, I will say. The speech last night by the president, I thought there were a couple of things that stood out to me. One was the contrast between an autocratic vision of the future and a democratic thought for the future. Instead of saying I alone can do it, instead of talking about moving all of the power into the White House, Joe Biden did something last night that sounds a little radical in 2024, but actually has its hair. It goes all the way back to the founding of America and has its heritage in the founding documents, where at the end, as we played, he said, history is in your hands.
It is.
Power. And then he's like, the power. Instead of an autocrat going, I have the... He said, the power is in your hands. The idea of America is in your hands. It was beautiful. It was beautiful because it was true. It also is beautiful because it's such a marked contrast between a vision, his vision, and I think most Americans' vision of what America should be, and the vision of a rising autocracy, of the idea of a strong man. So that thematically, it was just absolutely beautiful, and him talking about how he reveres the office of the presidency, but he loves his country more. I thought, though, just two practical matters that really stood out to me that Democrats should be talking about every day on the campaign trail are a couple of facts. Ronald Reagan said that facts were stubborn things. They really are. You know, that stubborn fact that I always talk about here when Donald Trump was running the first time and talking about the illegal invasion and rapists from Mexico, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and was going to build a wall because the crisis was so bad. What do I point to? I point to the statistics that even the Trump administration had in their documentation, that illegal border crossings from Mexico were at a 50-year low before Donald Trump came into office. A 50-year low under Barack Obama and Joe Biden. Illegal immigration has shot up. But the president said something last night that, again, Democrats should talk about on the campaign trail when illegal immigration comes in. First of all, they can once again talk about how it was Donald Trump that killed the toughest border security bill drafted by a conservative Republican from Oklahoma because he thought it would hurt him politically. But then what else did he say? He said illegal border crossings are lower now than when Donald Trump left office. That's one. Two, that crime, which Republicans are talking about, which Americans have been talking about a good bit. But now there's so many good things are happening and things are moving in a great direction. Violent crime is at a 50-year low. Let me say it again, Democrats. Violent crime across the United States is at a 50-year low. It means it's lower now than it was during any point during the Trump administration. So, again, we had beautiful themes flowing throughout, but also a couple of points of the successes that he is having right now on bringing inflation down, on bringing crime down, on bringing illegal border crossings down. The last two to a point that are even lower than any point during the Trump administration, certainly on violent crime.
Well, and he is choosing to step back from the campaign and end his presidency as an unmitigated success. Historically, you can't look at it any other way. You may not agree with his policies, but he got more done than any other president in modern American history, which is a very solid launching pad for Kamala Harris. It's not like he's ending a campaign because, you know, the presidency was a disaster or something bad happened or he, you know, like other presidencies have ended in the past. This is a good launch pad for Kamala Harris, and the Republicans' reaction to it is quite something. We'll get to it. It also might be quite revealing. We'll get to that. But from behind the resolute desk in the Oval Office, the president spoke about his desire to unite the Democratic Party and put the country ahead of his own personal ambition.
It's been the honor of my life to serve as your president. But in the defense of democracy, which is at stake, I think is more important than any title. I draw strength and I find joy in working for the American people. But this sacred task of perfecting our union is not about me. It's about you, your families, your futures. It's about we, the people. And we can never forget that. And I never have. I've made it clear that I believe America is at an inflection point. One of those rare moments in history when the decisions we make now will determine our fate of our nation and the world for decades to come. I believe my record as president, my leadership in the world, my vision for America's future, all merited a second term. But nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy. That includes personal ambition. So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. That's the best way to unite our nation. You know, there is a time and a place for long years of experience in public life. But there's also a time and a place for new voices, fresh voices, yes, younger voices. And that time and place is now. In just a few months, the American people will choose the course of America's future. I made my choice. I've made my views known. I would like to thank our great Vice President Kamala Harris. She's experienced, she's tough, she's capable. She's been an incredible partner to me and a leader for our country. Now the choice is up to you, the American people. I've given my heart and my soul to our nation, like so many others. I've been blessed a million times in return with the love and support of the American people. I hope you have some idea how grateful I am to all of you. The great thing about America is here, kings and dictators do not rule, the people do. History is in your hands. The power is in your hands. The idea of America lies in your hands. We just have to keep faith, keep the faith, and remember who we are. We're the United States of America, and there's simply nothing beyond our capacity when we do it together. So let's act together, preserve our democracy. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you.
You know, Ed Luce, I struck by the humility of that speech in stark contrast, not just to who Kamala Harris will now be running against, but also other politicians of this age, where they look at Donald Trump and think, oh, I need to puff my chest out. I need to talk about myself all the time. I need to talk about how powerful I am, that only I can fix it. I need to insult others. And the words are beautiful. I wrote them down here, and they struck me last night, and I just loved hearing it. I would have loved to hear this. I'd love to hear this from any politician, Republican, Democratic, Independent. I hope you have some idea of how grateful I am for you giving me this opportunity. And then he talks about how we aren't a nation of kings or dictators, that the power is in Americans' hands, that history is in Americans' hands, that the idea of America rests in the hands of everyday working Americans. That is the dream of America, not some powerful strong man saying, I alone can fix it. Not some powerful strong man saying, agree with me or I'll try you for treason. But to be humble in service. that sort of servant leadership that Jesus talked about. And again, to project that out as you're giving what in effect is your farewell speech to this campaign and country, I think is a wonderful example for politicians of all parties.
Yes, I agree. And I think, depending on what happens in November, this will, well, regardless of what happens in November, actually, this will go down in history as one of those moments that you've just described, Joe. I do think that a Kamala Harris victory would help cement this moment as an incredible moment in history. I was fascinated not just by his contrast with the unspoken, the unmentioned Donald Trump, which is as wide as the Grand Canyon in terms of the self-sacrifice involved here. But I was also fascinated by the hints that he's aware he's got 6 months left as president. And we could have an extremely interesting sort of dual role here between Kamala Harris as the president, as the potential next president, and a reinvigorated, in some ways liberated Joe Biden, who no longer needs to campaign, who's got an eighth of his presidency left. That's quite a long time, in which he can do things. And he mentioned one of those in the address, and that is reform the Supreme Court. An incredibly important measure to secure the future of the American Constitution and the Republic. And so I sort of noticed a little bit of steel there too, as well as nostalgia for an extraordinary storied career of service in American politics.